Let's establish something right away. The more you hunger for approval, the more you hand over control of your own mind. And the more you pursue validation, the further you stray from your authentic self. These aren't my words. They echo the philosophy of a man who believed that most people aren't driven by truth, but by image, not by integrity, but by fear. That man was Niccolo Machiavelli. He wasn't a saint, nor merely a skeptic, but a man who studied power with fearless precision, someone who dared to voice the truth society shames you for even thinking, that the masses don't want your freedom. They want your compliance. They want your smile, your silence, your assimilation. Machiavelli saw through it all. The more you immerse yourself in social comfort, the more you dilute your own intellect to align with the room. Because genuine thinking isolates. It scorches through illusions and leaves you exposed. And most people would rather pretend and be embraced than be real and rejected. But Machiavelli wasn't writing for the many. He wrote for the rare mind that dares to govern itself. And if you're still here reading this, perhaps that mind is beginning to awaken within you. Let's be honest, there's a cost to every social exchange. You force a smile when you're uneasy. You nod along when deep down you disagree. You say yes, just to avoid being singled out. And with each act of conformity, you trade a piece of your clarity. Another moment of inner truth, surrendered for external ease. Then you wonder why social events drain you, why you feel distant even among friends, why your inner voice grows quieter. It's because you've been shouting for others and whispering when it comes to yourself. You think you're growing, but you're simply adapting, compressing yourself, shaving off the unique angles of who you are until you fit so seamlessly that you vanish. And society applauds your vanishing act because a compliant mind is easier to steer. Machiavelli warned us. In politics and in life, the illusion of virtue is often more effective than genuine virtue. But hidden between his lines was another insight. When you begin living for appearances, you forget how to live with depth, because once you're easy to swallow, you lose your substance. The more you chase social approval, the more you become a reflection of others, and less a reflection of yourself. Each forced laugh, each handshake you regret, each moment you stay silent to protect your image, it all accumulates. You build layer by layer, a prison that looks like popularity on the outside, but feels like erosion of thought from the inside. And the tragedy is, you don't even realize it. You think you're flourishing because people smile at you, but they're not smiling at you. They're smiling at your mask. And over time, you start to believe that the mask is your identity. That's the moment where dullness begins to take root. Not because you've lost your intelligence or your talents, but because you've stopped thinking from within. You've handed over your judgment to the collective. And let's be real. The group doesn't crave wisdom. It craves ease, agreement, and predictability. It wants you to stick to your role, be amusing, be compliant, be non-threatening, but never ever be the one who reminds others of the truth they abandoned. Because if you do, they'll turn against you not for being incorrect, but for being accurate. Your presence becomes a reflection they'd rather not face. So you stay silent. You nod along. You laugh on cue. And each time you do, your thinking dulls not immediately, but slowly, subtly. The edge of your thoughts gives way to triviality. The fire in your gut is replaced by politeness. Your curiosity turns into rehearsed responses. Your dreams become products. And worst of all, you stop resisting. Because mediocrity has one powerful illusion. It convinces you you're doing great while you conform. It whispers, "You're doing fine. People like you." And that quiet voice drowns the roar of your authentic self, the one that once burned to challenge, to disrupt, to be unapologetically real. But not anymore. Because now, more than anything, you want to fit in. You want acceptance. You want to belong. And the cost of that? Your sharpness, your essence, your silence. Machiavelli once observed that human behavior is motivated by two primal forces, love and fear. But in today's world, a third has emerged: validation. You're so desperate to be affirmed, you'll betray your own mind for a like, a nod, a seat at the table. You'll dilute your thoughts to fit the script. You'll echo what others say just to avoid being the one with no echo. Then you'll return home confused about why your thoughts feel fuzzy and flat. You'll call it anxiety, maybe depression. And maybe it is. But maybe, just maybe, you're overdosed on approval. You've inhaled so much collective thinking that now your own mind can't function independently. This isn't about isolating yourself from the world. It's about reclaiming your ability to think without being swayed, to act without performing, to exist without applause. Machiavelli never pleaded for comprehension. He wrote as if his reader was prepared, and if they weren't, that wasn't his problem. That's the kind of mindset missing today. People are obsessed with being liked, being followed, being validated. But genuine intelligence doesn't beg for recognition. It radiates, it challenges, it disrupts. It doesn't seek permission to be, it simply is. Even if the room falls silent, even if the party moves past you, even if the crowd acts like you don't exist, because the collective resents self-possessed minds. Why? Because they can't control them. And people despise what they cannot reshape. So they'll call you arrogant, too much, distant, cold. But what they're really saying is, you remind me of the freedom I abandoned. And that truth unsettles them. Your clarity becomes their discomfort. And this is where the true test begins. Will you dull your edges again just to make others feel at ease? Or will you remain rooted in your unfiltered, burning truth and let the world shift around you? Most people won't. That's why the average person is easy to predict, easy to appease, easy to control. Because they've been conditioned to avoid depth, to avoid honesty, to avoid living with full autonomy. They fear what deep thought might cost. And in that fear, mediocrity finds a permanent home. Because mediocrity doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't always look like ignorance. Sometimes it shows up as charisma, as charm, as being well-liked. But beneath the surface, it's decay, the slow erosion of a spirit exchanged for applause and surface-level approval. And now you're at the crossroads. The decision you've been sidestepping for far too long. Will you continue bowing to comfort and conformity, or will you finally hone your mind like a blade and carve your way through the noise? Will you be bold enough to be misunderstood, brave enough to be disliked, misjudged, even cast out not because you were wrong, but because you chose not to bend? This is where Machiavellian clarity begins. Not in controlling others, but in radical command over your own being. Not in charming crowds, but in walking away from them without remorse. Not in building connections, but in building inner strength. Not in applause, but in solitude. Because solitude, when chosen, isn't a void. It's power. It's the furnace where your real identity is forged. And if you've made it this far, still following each thought, still resonating with every sentence, then maybe, just maybe, you're done pretending. You're ready to swap approval for awareness, companionship for freedom, safety for soul. You're ready to stop blending in and start standing alone. Welcome to the fracture. Welcome to yourself. But be warned, this split is irreversible. Once it breaks you open, it doesn't heal back, it widens. Because from now on, every shallow exchange will jar you. Every fake laugh will ring hollow. Every moment of groupthink will awaken resistance within you, not out of superiority, but because something within you has come alive. The part of you that Machiavelli whispered to across generations. The part that understands that true power doesn't come from titles or followers or praise. It comes from clarity, from a mind unclouded by noise, from a judgment unhooked from external approval, from a truth that stands firm, even under pressure. And that, my friend, is threatening. Not because it injures others, but because it disrupts the design. The system thrives on compliance, on politeness, on the quiet agreements we've all signed to not look too hard at the lies we coexist with. But you weren't born to follow those illusions. You were born to dismantle them. Yet they've numbed you, shaped you, groomed you to smile when you should speak up, to applaud when you should challenge, to nod when every fiber in your body says no. And with each surrender, your clarity dulled, your fire weakened, Your mind became a prop for your image. You began to think for reaction, not for revelation. To speak for approval, not for insight. And now you're here locked in conflict with the version of yourself you've been performing. Exhausted by the masks. Weary from not knowing which you is genuine. And you're ready to escape. But escaping doesn't mean disappearing. It means detaching. It means showing up as you are, unyielding. Being in the world but not owned by it. Being seen but not deceived. Being recognized but never predictable. That's the heart of Machiavellian detachment. Engage in the game, but don't become it. Smile when needed, but never bow. Speak when necessary, but never seek validation. Bare your teeth when called for, but never your desperation. Because the world doesn't admire the needy. It devours those desperate to fit in. And it elevates those who can walk away without hesitation, without apology. That's why the sovereign mind is unmistakable. It radiates a power that stems not from constant presence, but from rare access. It draws respect not by trying to be everywhere, but by being elusive. And most people loathe what they can't forecast. That's where your strength lives, in your unpredictability. In your refusal to sell your soul for social approval. In your silence when the crowd demands noise. In your stillness while others scramble for attention. You become the anchor in a whirlwind of distraction. The proof that not everyone is for sale, that not everyone bows, and the world won't know how to respond. Some will admire your posture. Some will try to tear it down. Most won't understand you at all. Let them. That's not your responsibility. Clarity always comes at the expense of comfort, and you've either already paid the price or you're beginning to. So now, only one question remains. What kind of existence do you want to lead? One built on applause and approval? Or one that feels truly your own even in silence? In rejection? In isolation? Most people opt for the first path. It's softer, safer. It comes with attention, parties, praise. But it also comes with decay, the slow erosion of knowing you've become a product, not a person. A response, not a force. A copy, not a thinker. But if you choose the second, if you choose sovereignty, you'll begin alone. But it's a path that shapes rulers, not jesters. You begin to think with more depth, speak with more weight, live with more intention. You learn to say no without guilt. You stop over-explaining. You let your quiet carry the message. You no longer chase connection, you earn respect. You no longer beg for strength, you build it. And through that evolution, something rare happens. The world begins to bend around your gravity. The same people you once tried to impress start reshaping themselves to fit your presence, not because you pleaded for it, but because you refused to break. Machiavelli once wrote that it's better to be feared than loved if both aren't possible. But the sovereign mind doesn't require fear or affection. It requires space. It doesn't chase applause, it creates distance. And that distance is what earns real respect. Stop apologizing for being serious, for your passion, for your depth of thought. The world already has its fill of entertainers, people who are easy to absorb and easy to forget. You weren't built to be forgettable. You were meant to provoke, to awaken, to shake people free from their mental sleep. But to do that, you must stop being socially agreeable. Not stop being compassionate, but stop being insincere. Stop choosing connection when truth is the cost. Stop confusing attention with genuine care. Let others misread you. Let them whisper. Let them walk away. You're not here to uphold their illusions, you're here to destroy your own. Ask yourself, who is this performance for? Who gains from this polished version of me? And who pays the price? 9 times out of 10, it's you. You carry the weight. Your mind grows weary. Your truth gets buried. So stop. Stop nourishing the lie. Stop sipping from the comfort of shallow belonging. The more you submit to it, the more power it has over you. Until one day you wake up surrounded by success and feel alien in your own head. You'll have allies, accolades, even influence, but no voice, no insight, no edge. Just another gleaming cog in a machine built for appearances. Is that your goal? Or do you still long to be wild, unrefined, charged? and real. You can't have both. You must choose. The path of authentic intellect is isolating. It's harsh, but it's the only one that leads you back to yourself. And what waits at the end isn't a crowd clapping. It's peace. Peace that's immune to popularity, confidence that doesn't feed on praise, an identity that stands firm even when everything around it trembles. Machiavelli understood this. He knew how fragile people can be, how few can confront truth without recoiling, how most would rather live inside a beautiful illusion than face a harsh reality. He didn't feel sorry for them. He didn't try to fix them. He wrote for those who could bear power without delusion. And now that philosophy is in your hands. Not the watered-down version fit for social media, but the raw, cutting truth. What you do with it is your decision. You can step away or step fully in. Burn the polite facades. Burn the need to blend. Burn the social scripts you've perfected just to survive. And once the smoke fades, let's see what remains. If you find confusion good, if you meet silence even better, if there's discomfort perfect, that's how you know you're shedding layers. That's how you know you're outgrowing sociability. And what takes its place won't be hollow, it'll be honest. Sharp, pure, and entirely yours. Welcome to the other side. Because clarity isn't a peaceful endpoint, it's a war zone. The moment you start to see the pattern shifts. People who once welcomed you will now look at you sideways. They'll call you cold, distant, too intense, not because you've changed, but because you stopped playing along with their rhythm. The moment you stop repeating their beliefs, they feel revealed. And that exposure breeds discomfort, even hostility. Get ready for it. Accept it. Machiavelli never promised comfort, he offered a blueprint. And the blueprint is clear. Think independently. Move with intention. And never let your craving for acceptance guide your actions. The more your mind sharpens, the more isolated you may feel. But that solitude isn't emptiness, it's refinement. It's the silence necessary to align with your internal compass, and that compass won't take you to ease, but it will lead you straight to truth. And once you've claimed that truth as your own, no applause in the world can tempt you to give it up. You'll find yourself surrounded by people laughing, yet you'll feel detached. You'll hear their words and recognize the loops, the scripts they use to avoid depth, and you'll remain silent not because you lack something to say, but because there's nothing genuine that can survive in such shallow conversation. You'll leave events earlier. You'll stop replying to calls that don't nourish your thoughts. You'll start creating a life with fewer connections but deeper ones. And even in that life, you'll keep parts of yourself protected not out of fear, but out of discernment. You'll realize your mind is no longer a display for public approval. It's an instrument, and instruments aren't handed to just anyone. Not everyone is worthy of access. And yes, this shift will unsettle others. They'll notice the change. Even if they can't name it, they'll say, "You've changed." And you'll smile not to confirm it, but to silently affirm what they already sense. You're no longer up for negotiation. The older version of you, the social chameleon, was always present, always open, always accommodating. But this version, it's careful, selective, intentional. People pick up on the fact that you've detached from need, and it unsettles them. Because in a culture hooked on attention, indifference is power. And when solitude no longer scares you, you become untouchable. Understand this. Being misunderstood is not a weakness. It's a filter. It keeps out those drawn to your facade, not your substance. Every time someone gets you wrong, it's the world peeling back another layer of distraction. Every false assumption removes noise and leaves room for those who see you clearly. And if no one sees you perfect, that gives you the rare chance to see yourself. Not the character you play for others, but the raw, undistorted awareness behind your own eyes. That is where sovereignty begins. Not in performance, but in presence. The kind of presence that doesn't shrink or inflate based on who's looking. The kind of presence that sits quietly with itself and doesn't need an escape hatch. That kind of self-possession unsettles society because it can't be bought, shamed, or steered. It's what Machiavelli called fortitude of soul, the inner armor of rulers. But that kind of spirit isn't born from praise. It is cultivated in isolation, hardened through being dismissed, shaped in the moments where everyone walks away and you stay, steady and unshaken. This isn't sentimental, it's unflinching, but it's the only route to self-mastery. And that mastery, it's where real power begins. Not the loud theatrical kind, but the quiet presence that enters a room and shifts its gravity. No need for noise, no need for effort, just presence, just honesty, just undeniable clarity. But clarity requires defense, because the world will try to lure you back through distraction, guilt, and seduction. It will whisper, "Come back, just a little. Be softer. Be easier to swallow." Quote, "And the moment you listen, you lose sharpness. You blunt your own edge. Before you know it, you're back to mimicking, nodding, smiling through clenched teeth seething inside. Don't go back. Not for affection. Not for ease. Because what you're creating isn't fleeting, it's a code, a legacy, a standard. The standard of someone who pauses before they speak, who observes before they respond, who doesn't simply react to life but reshapes it with discipline. And here's the secret they don't teach you. Real discipline is isolating. It's walking away from chaos that once entertained you. It's turning down praise that once validated you. It's saying no so often that you forget what fake excitement even feels like. But inside that emptiness, clarity emerges. Peace surfaces. You no longer need constant stimulation. You become your own source of drive, your own compass. And from that space, every choice gains focus. Every word carries weight. Every relationship becomes intentional. You no longer gather people, you filter them. You stop chasing relevance. You embody mastery. That is modern Machiavellian intelligence. Not trickery, but precision. Not illusion, but insight. Not charm, but control. It's not about being feared, it's about earning silent respect. It's about people feeling your gravity, even if they don't understand you. It's about holding enough mystery to draw them in, but never too close. Not because you're hiding, but because you've learned some things are sacred, especially your mind. That is your domain. Protect it, sharpen it, rule it, and from that throne shape your world. Not with volume, but with impact. Your very existence becomes a message. Your stillness becomes a method. Your refusal to conform becomes the new measure. People may never say it aloud, but they'll feel it. You are different. Not better, just sovereign. Not louder, just rooted. And in that steady clarity, foolishness fades. Because foolishness can't survive in isolation. It needs an audience. It needs applause. It needs the crowd to feel real. But intelligence? It stands alone. With or without applause. With or without followers. With or without small talk. And that's the final evolution, to become so deeply anchored in yourself that solitude never feels like a void. Because the company you keep in your own mind is enough. You've made it through noise, through dependency, through the erosion of your identity. You've walked through the furnace of rejection and emerged sharper, maybe colder, but more authentic than ever. And now, you've become the kind of person who doesn't need volume to be heard, who doesn't need to defend what's true, who no longer compromises for approval because you've remembered what the world made you forget, that a mind in full command of itself is the most formidable force in existence. So from this point on, be formidable, not because you're ruthless, but because you're resolute, not because you overpower, but because you can't be possessed. And above all, be feared, because your words no longer seek connection. They emerge from a place that already arrived. You don't speak to be welcomed, you speak from wholeness. And when you enter that space, unapologetic, unrehearsed, unbothered by outside validation, something shifts. You stop following their rules, and you still rise. Not through opposition, but through detachment. Not by commanding the space, but by letting the space adjust to your quiet strength. Your presence becomes a paradox. You don't chase attention, yet your absence is palpable. You don't raise your voice, yet your silence echoes longer than their noise. That's not mystique. That's power, but not the type preached in motivation seminars or marketed in books. This is Machiavellian power, born not from chaos, but from clarity. Not from manipulation, but from total mastery of your emotional hunger, the hunger for praise, belonging, acceptance. You deny it, and in that denial, you nourish something higher, your integrity. And now the true challenge emerges. Not whether you can stay calm in silence, but whether you can remain sovereign when the world tries to pull you back, when they tempt you with the same offers you used to chase. When they say, "We miss how you used to be," hoping you'll slip back into the version of yourself that made them comfortable. But that version is long gone. It vanished the moment you saw that every fake smile was a betrayal of self. Every nod you forced was a quiet act of treason against your own clarity. And you laid that version to rest without ceremony, alone, as it should be. Because rebirth doesn't come with applause, it comes in silence, through personal sacrifice. So when the world tries again to lure you back with familiar trades, recognition in exchange for your authenticity, visibility for your peace, hype in place of your groundedness, you'll smile, not because you're tempted, but because you remember. You remember the noise of that mental prison. You remember how hollow the compliments were. You remember how much of yourself you had to abandon just to stay liked. And so, you'll walk away again, not from bitterness, but from memory. And that memory that lived proof of what sociability truly costs becomes your inner compass. You'll feel it deeply. Every time you dilute yourself, you lose richness. Every time you echo instead of originate, you lose sharpness. Every time you bow for applause, you lose height. So you rise not to impress, not to retaliate, but because there's nowhere else to go once you've shed the disguise and kept your mind intact. The truth is, most people grow older without growing deeper. They get more refined, but not more insightful. More social, but not more self-aware. But you pick the steep road, the solitary one, and in doing so, you escape what nearly everyone stays trapped in, the cycle, that endless loop of proving yourself, pleasing others, performing for approval. You broke free. Now you're here not flawless, not complete, but liberated. And liberation, once tasted, can never be forgotten. You'll never return to meaningless small talk with the same grin. You'll never say, "I'm fine," without feeling the sting of dishonesty. You'll never sit among the masses and forget your own reflection. Because now your clarity is your shield, quiet, unseen, and impenetrable. So let them talk. Let them speculate. Let them label you distant, proud, unapproachable. Wear those labels like a crown, because what they call arrogance is often just self-respect. What they call detachment is discernment. And what they call coldness is just a truth too sharp for soft hands. Let them choke on their cliches. Let them drown in their own repetition. You've outgrown the script. You don't need a role in their story anymore because you've become the writer, the narrator, the architect of your own presence. And now that you know who you are, guard it, reinforce it, build your world around it. Let no feeble hand reach into your thoughts. Let no delicate whisper redirect your compass. Let no soothing illusion pull you back into performance. You've seen what lies behind the facade. You've felt the hidden toll of always being agreeable. And now you've chosen something rare, something bold, something sacred. To be unshakably clear regardless of who stays or walks away. That isn't coldness. That's certainty. That's not isolation. That's elevation. You are no longer just another in the crowd. You are singular, unmistakable. You are one of one.